OnEducation is sponsored by Participate, a community learning platform where the world learns together. Later in the episode, we'll hear about one of Participate's communities, Teach the Global Goals, and how you can get involved in its free community learning opportunities with educators around the world.
I'm too tired, Glenn, as it is. Welcome to OnEducation, part of the On Podcast Media Network. My name is Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glenn Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will discuss whether educators should join the new social media app, Clubhouse, debate whether teaching is still an appealing profession, give you some news about an epic educational partnership, and our guest this week is educator and author Heidi Williams.
I actually hadn't read the intro yet. That was a pretty epic play on words that you did there.
I usually am not that clever, so that was it. That was a very easy one.
Well done, Glenn. It's only been 3 years, and you've finally mastered the art of the intro.
It's usually not very clever. I just mix up the words discuss and debate, and I don't know if we do discuss. I don't know how often we debate.
We don't debate. We very rarely disagree.
That's true. Though we have disagreed on some things. We should recap.
We should do
Mike
an episode where we find things that we disagree on and just have an angry episode. I wouldn't enjoy that.
I don't know if it would be angry, but it would be funny.
Oh, I'd be angry.
We could have Noah be the
the moderator.
The moderator, exactly. Keep our
the judge, the referee.
Yeah, it'll be
That's
a debate.
What he might need.
I think you could burn me in a debate though, but a discussion we could have. Yes,
we can always, Glenn. I will discuss things with you anytime, but in particular once a week on Monday nights.
Exactly. Yep, is when our true discussions take place.
It is. So what do you been? Are you playing anything? Hey, you hit your highest rank ever in Hearthstone this week. Did you not?
I did. Yes, I am.
Whew.
I'm almost top 1,000 legend, which means that there would only be, it seems like a not that good of a number, but if you know Hearthstone,
no.
Are
you
saying
that you're
1,
in the top 1,000 Hearthstone players
in North America? So there's a region.
America?
Yeah, there's a region in North America. So there's a server in North America. There's one in China.
Yeah.
That serves Asia, and there's a European one. So the North American server is the one that I play on. I almost got less than 1,000. Basically, you start trying to go towards number one, right? So yeah. I believe that my highest rank was 1,100 and something, and I think I'm sitting just right in the middle of the thousands there, so about 1,500 at the moment, which is crazy insane to talk about my journey of I just was happy to make it to Legend at one point. It wasn't that long ago. And then usually I sat around in the 10,000s as far as in Legend, 10,000 rank. And then now it's, this is the best ever, so that's pretty good.
I know that you enjoy the music streams that you've been doing, but I'm telling you, you need to stop doing that immediately and stream Hearthstone. And I don't know why you're not putting your rank. You need to put your rank in your stream titles.
Okay.
It's getting to the point where, so listen, people watch Twitch streamers for one of two reasons. It's not usually both. Yep. You're either very entertaining.
Yes. True.
Right?
Or
like Tim the Tap Man, for example, is incredibly entertaining.
Yeah.
He's not a particularly good video game player.
Yeah.
But he had 70,000 people watching him play Fall Guys because of how hilarious it was and how terrible he was at it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that is why they were watching Tim. or you have people who are very good
Yes.
at playing
Excellent
a game.
players.
And
Ninja.
there's
Yes.
folks like Ninja and Summit are two really good examples of folks that are very good
Yes.
video game players that are like, and I mean, to be honest, Ninja's kind of tailing off a little bit.
Sure.
But that's the thing, is that as he's become less really good at playing, because he's
probably
not
better at entertaining, right?
To be fair, he's
Yeah.
not super entertaining.
No.
Like his thing was that he was very, very good.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
and he was top of Fortnite at various points, right?
Yes.
Where Summit is like the closest I can think of to someone who's a little bit of both. He's pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
And he's very good. And he can straddle between the two pretty easily. But anyways,
Yes.
you are very like being one of the top 1,000 Hearthstone players. That's a thing.
Sure.
And
no, yeah.
it's ridiculous that you're not like
I will take that
capitalizing.
into
Like, you need to-
consideration.
dude. I mean, I don't want to be your stream coach or anything, but I'm telling you, you need
But
to
you
put
are.
your rank in the title of your stream, and you need
Okay.
to go live as many
And adjust.
nights as you can humanly possibly go,
Okay.
and play, because you'll get an audience because you're very good at it. Like,
It's my stream coach.
It's well, maybe.
You just coached me up,
Give
so
me
that's
a,
good.
Give me a cut. Give me a cut of those.
I'm gonna give you a
Give me a
commission
cut of
once I
those
start.
sweet,
Yes.
sweet subs.
Yes, exactly. Once I
We'll
start
be-
making
we'll
it.
be good.
What about you?
So
what have you been up to?
So I mean, to be fair, I'm not playing. I haven't streamed very much at all. A combination of. So I have a new rule. So this is actually good. I have a
Okay.
new rule.
What's the new
I'm
rule?
not allowed to stream. I will not let myself stream unless I've closed my Apple Health rings for the day.
Oh,
So you know what I mean by
nice.
my rings, right?
Yeah,
like
like
so
your-
your
your-
move steps, So I will not stream unless I've already closed my rings. So there's been nights where I haven't closed them until 8:00, and I've thought about streaming, and I'm like, no. And also, like, there's been nights where I've wanted to stream, but I also haven't closed my rings. So well, Mike from 3 years ago would have streamed, but Mike now decides to get on the bike instead. So
Hey,
so that's good. I'm
a good help.
I'm working really hard.
Yes.
And I'm kind of back into a bit of a groove. And you can
Good.
call Peloton a cult all you want. I've never exercised more in my life
Yeah.
and harder than I'm exercising right now with it.
Good.
Like, ever.
So-
Like, even with the Zwift, and I was on a roll with Zwift, but this is totally different in a bunch of different ways. And I'm not going to be one of those like Peloton psychopaths that is like but I'm just telling you
doing well for you.
anecdotally,
Yeah.
I've never exercised more than I'm exercising now.
Hey, that's
And,
awesome news to hear.
And so, I don't know what it's translating. I'm certainly not losing weight, so whatever the hell that means,
Yeah, weight is
But-
relative, though. That's what you have to remember too. Because even when
Yeah.
I was lifting, and I was in really, really good shape, I was actually heavier than I ever was previously. But I was in 1,000 times better shape. So as you
Something
start
about
kind of going through it, you
muscle
will
weighs
lose
more than fat.
You will lose weight at a certain juncture. But as you start continuing to go ahead and gain muscle and stuff, I wouldn't use that as your measuring stick. Use all your other things that you're talking about, which is fantastic and really good discipline too.
I'm trying to eat a little bit better. I'm still a sucker for like chicken wings,
Sure.
but I think February and March have been a lot better than previous months for ordering takeout and stuff like that. We've been pretty good with that. So part of a package, and so I guess I need to get into a better habit of exercising in the mornings.
Nice.
Or sometime during the day, so that I can stream at night, which I would still like to do.
It's awesome. It's a good idea.
Basement will be done tomorrow.
Woo!
So, new office, all the exercise equipment's going down there. New big ass TV in the living room. It's gonna be great. And then it'll be a nice place to exercise, which is exciting. So it was International Women's Day on Monday, and it's funny that it's in the outline because I was actually thinking a lot about and reading a lot about the COVID relief bill that just passed the House for the second time today, actually. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking a lot about that in context of International Women's Day, not just, the idea that, Kamala Harris is the vice president and so, and the government is largely powered by the influence of women mm-hmm. right now, in particular, Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House.
Yes.
And stuff like that. But the bill, the law reminds me, that there is an incredible amount of challenge still to overcome just for being a woman in the United States and in the world.
Yes.
And so this hopefully goes to help that, but yeah, there's a lot of obstacles still to overcome, right?
Yes. Yeah, and that's the thing. It just reminds me of any time you bring up a specific group and you're celebrating them, you also have to bring to light that though you've made movement in a positive direction, specifically here with women, there's still a long ways to go. Family medical leave in the United States is just freaking terrible. Mm-hmm. And especially specifically related to the teaching profession, which is mostly women. The way that women have to just kind of maneuver their way around this specific law with the amount of time that they actually get off, plus they have to accumulate basically numbers of days off in order to get those days paid, and then eventually they take unpaid leave for a period of time, unless they exactly time out the birth of their kid so that they can sort of hit some part of the summer and then have to go back. And basically women, as I was discussing this with my wife, Nicole, they can't win in any of these types of things. In other words, you want to raise a family, as Nicole did, and she actually took some time off to raise our kids when they were little. And so if you look at her resume, it's like sporadic, and it doesn't look like she's been consistently working at places, because she hasn't, because she raised our kids, mm-hmm. which is phenomenal to have had that opportunity to do that. But now when she comes back into the workforce, if you just looked at it, you just looked at a resume, you'd be like, what's wrong with this person? And unfortunately, that happens a lot to women. They help to basically raise their kids, and then they try to come back to the workforce, and then there is this thing where we're like, yeah, you don't have any current experience or blah, blah, blah. And so that's just terrible. I hate that's the case. Or the opposite, where they can't win, is they decide to make the decision to put their kids into daycare, which is 100% like, yeah, go ahead and do that if you choose to do that. But that's still, a lot of people judge you on that end too.
Sure they do.
if you have your kid in daycare and then you go back to work. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Family medical leave still needs to be improved drastically in the United States. Pay is still not where it should be. It's still not equal to men, and hiring practices are still not there. And so, though I celebrate all of the amazing women, all of our colleagues, all of our friends, and obviously our relatives, our moms and our sisters, and so on and so forth, our wives, I want to make sure we bring to light too that there's still a lot of work to be done to make them at least equal to us, and we know that they are amazing. That without them, we would suck, Mike. Me and you, we'd be in shambles. So without our wives, without our moms, my God, yeah. So yeah, that would not be a good world of men.
No,
that would not be a good thing. So anyway, happy International Women's Day to all of you, amazing listeners, you women out there, our family members, and we will continue, to strive to move forward and to make things equitable for you too.
Absolutely. Are you on You're on Clubhouse, aren't you?
Yes, I got an invite. I can't remember from who. It might have been.
Did I give it to you?
Maybe it was you. I don't know who it was. But someone sent me an email and it said you're been invited to Clubhouse. And I'm like, okay.
I'm already off the bandwagon.
I clicked it. I joined it, but I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, and you were off the bandwagon quicker than I was.
I looked at it and I started looking at the things and I'm like, oh, it's like a group chat. You know what it reminds me of is back Voxer. In the day. Yeah. It's kind of like Voxer. Yeah. It is Voxer, kind of.
Kind of like it's exactly like Voxer.
Yeah.
It's voice chats, but I mean,
voice chat.
The thing with Voxer is that it's kind of like a walkie-talkie.
Yeah, and it's
and it's that but synchronous. You can still have rooms and stuff like that, like this. But Clubhouse is more like if you wanted to do like separated into little sessions.
Okay.
And then have audiences. It's like yeah.
So they're super smart about the way that they've created the hype about it with the invites. Not everybody gets in unless you're invited.
Scarcity, right? Yeah.
But we're gonna make sure we link the article that Carl Hooker posted on Twitter when we were having this discussion about this, because if you read this article, I'm sure a lot of social media companies are doing this, but this one in particular, we know exactly what they're doing as far as privacy is concerned. And a couple of things that were brought to light that I was like, oh man. One of the things that you do when you join the club of Clubhouse is you allow them to go into your contacts list. And they do it on behalf of you so that you can then send out invites to your friends who aren't in the club yet. But in those contacts, they take all the contact information, including the phone numbers and the emails of all of your contacts inside of your phone, of your contact list, which, again, probably many tech companies are doing this, but you got to read this article and kind of go through it and go, when you accept the terms and agreements of this company, they're taking as much as they possibly can from you, and they can use all of those things because you've given them permission to go ahead and do that. So it's an interesting thing. I don't know. It reminded me, Mike, of we grew up in the 90s, and there was this new technology. Now we're dating ourselves here, but we had landline phones, and then the telephone companies, you could pay a little bit of extra money. And we didn't have this, but some of my friends were like, they could afford this extra $3 a month or whatever it was. And you could do party lines. Remember this, Mike?
Okay.
Where you could call your friend, and then you could click a button and you could have multiple friends on all at the same time.
Yeah.
And be talking on the phone, on a landline phone all together.
Yeah.
And that was, if you had that and you had all your friends, you were like, ooh, look at us, kind of that thing. Same concept. Same concept, except the year is 2021 instead of 1991 or 2, whatever that
digital party line.
Yes.
That's what Clubhouse is. Clubhouse is the digital party line.
So I'm not sure about it as far as education is concerned, but, yeah, we're kind of over it already too, me and you.
I don't have the energy. Someone asked me, and I said, I don't have the energy for another social network. I don't have Voxer on my phone now either. I just don't have I didn't have the energy to keep up.
Yeah.
And, Twitter's releasing basically a Clubhouse competitor already. There's people who have access to it. I think it's called Rooms. And there's people that have it. Yeah. So there's a Clubhouse competitor that's going to be built right in, and it'll be on Twitter, where I already have almost you have like whatever 13,000 followers, and I got almost 10. I mean, why would I go and try to build a following on another social network or whatever when I can just use the one where I have lots of followers already?
Agreed.
It's just I don't have that. I'm too tired, Glenn, as it is. I'm too tired.
Yeah. Well,
to deal with it.
I agree.
So
with
I'm
you.
not.
Yeah. I agree.
I'm boycotting. I'm getting angrier the longer we've talking about it. I'm boycotting Clubhouse.
Good.
Boycott
Good.
Clubhouse. Good. There was an article in EdSurge.
Yes.
Is teaching still an appealing profession? A growing teacher shortage worries experts. This I hadn't read the article yet. The title's a little triggering. I'll say it's pretty regional, I would say, but I would also say that there is definitely in Southern Ontario, there's definitely a supply teacher shortage, a substitute teacher shortage.
Really?
Where people don't want to like if you wanted a full-time teaching job this year, you'd have one already. Like you'd be teaching right now because so many people retired and whatever. People were like, screw this, especially the folks that were ready to retire. A lot of people have taken like early retirement and stuff like that. But in like we've talked about this a bunch of times, especially early on in the history of the podcast, we talked about this a lot, but you don't leave teaching in Ontario. Like, a teacher with 10 years teaching experience in Southern Ontario makes I think Cheryl made $102,000 last year.
Yeah, that's significant,
right?
Yes.
So, and you have a full pension when you retire.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, like, teachers generally don't quit teaching in Southern Ontario. In Canada, it's pretty across the board. That's kind of like the salary structure. So, if you, but it's also really hard to get a job.
Sure.
Right. It's super hard to get a teaching job in Ontario. So
it's way different than here. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Like where our friend Becky, working in Florida, making like a third of what Cheryl made, if that, and being forced to go in person. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're putting your life at risk for like basically a part-time job salary. Yeah. Or like a entry level. Like, if you've been teaching 10 years, do you really deserve to only make $35,000 a year? Like, that's insanity to me.
That's a lot of states.
That's why teachers are leaving.
Yes. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's what it says. Is it still an appealing profession? I would say no. And we've talked about this before. I've actually
not at that income level.
There's a lot of problems with it. People, in the article it describes that not only is the pay not adequate, the benefits aren't adequate anymore. They used to be that teaching in the United States, the best part of being a teacher was maybe you didn't get paid super optimally, but your benefits were great. So you had great retirement benefits. You were able to go ahead and have full insurance, that basically covered all of the things that you needed to go ahead and cover. That doesn't exist as it once did. And the pay hasn't increased to account for cost of living and what has happened as far as in the United States, as far as how much it costs to actually live. And the final thing here is just talking about lack of support, and we've talked about it too on the show, as far as professional development and helping the profession grow itself, and helping, like you talk about all the time, having mentors, having support structures there in place to make sure that a teacher has the opportunity to become the best teacher they can possibly become, and having the infrastructure in place to go ahead and have that happen across the board. I would say that's not happening. So many people, as you said too, Mike, they're just exploring other avenues. They're like, if I graduate and I already am doing this college degree, I can go into the private sector and earn twice as much money or 3 times as much money or whatever else it might be. Mm-hmm. Plus it's a great job, and I have all of these things. I have good support structures in place, good benefits. Why wouldn't I go seek those things out? We hope that those things do change.
You have to want to teach.
Yes.
You have to want to teach now.
For sure.
Like, it's different. Like, where, I'm not sure, I'm not certain that that's the case in Ontario.
Sure.
A lot of people choose teaching because it has all of those things that you were saying. It's got a great benefits package. It's got a really great salary. It's got, pretty rewarding work situation. Yes. It's got, a lot of these cool benefits and the pension at the end. So you can go through a teaching career, and for the better part of like 35, 40 years of that career and be making $100,000 or more a year, which anyone can live on, and feel pretty satisfied that you've made the right choice.
For
now,
sure.
That being said, if you're smart and articulate and did well at school, and you live in Florida, for example, and you're faced with choice, I don't know why you would choose teaching. I don't, like, you could be anything else in the world. It's I remember an article back probably 7 or 8 years ago. It was maybe even 10 years ago. It was in the heyday of the UFC, when the UFC was like
sure
the biggest thing in the world, right? But it's always stuck with me because it was an article about a specific fighter who was a world-class athlete in a number of different sports. I think in this case it was like baseball and basketball, yet chose to focus his professional athletic career in the UFC because, again, when faced with choice, someone who was equally capable of being anything that they wanted to be in athletics, like this kid could have pivoted and probably been a world-class football player too, right? Chose the UFC because of the income potential of the career that he could have had as a fighter, as opposed to being a basketball player or a baseball player. And I thought that was super interesting. I don't know how that panned out for that specific person. Possibly not well. I mean, the UFC isn't what it used to be.
It's brutal too.
But that being said, baseball isn't necessarily what it used to be either.
True. Yeah.
But it was a great article about choice and about the free market and about what capable people are able to do when faced with options. And that you are, unless you want to be a teacher, people are choosing something else.
Yeah.
Because they're feeling more respected. They're feeling more rewarded. They're feeling more, financially taken care of or compensated fairly. They're looked at in a more favorable light in the public. So they have choices and they're making them, and it's not good in a lot of cases. And so we'll link the article in the show notes. For sure. But it's definitely some food for thought.
Absolutely. So we have an epic announcement. The epic
announcement. So by the time you're listening to this, there will have been a press release. We're the cool kids. We know this in advance. When we're talking right now, no one in the world knows about this except for a few people. But it's funny that I sent Steve Isaacs a message and said, I know everything.
I told him. He's like, what do you know?
I know everything. He said, what do you know? And I said, I know about the Epic Games partnership with Games for Change. And he's like, how do you know about that? We haven't announced it yet. And I said, Steve, I know everything. So big announcement. Yeah. Epic Games is partnering with Games for Change to deliver a whole bunch of workshop content related to Fortnite, Twin Motion, and Unreal Engine There's going to be a ton of half-day workshops for Fortnite Creative, where teachers can learn how to use Fortnite Creative, and it'll be hands-on. Great way to start.
Love
educators on the road to using Fortnite potentially in the classroom, both in person or virtually. There will be a kind of you can level up to a next level of these Fortnite creative workshops where you can dig a little bit deeper into some of the functionality. And then a teach with Unreal Engine workshop as well, where if you want to learn how to use Unreal Engine for teaching in your classroom, for creating, or making video games or whatever you want to use Unreal Engine for, because to be honest, it's used in a ton of different industries.
Yes.
Not just in video games. There's going to be tons and tons of content for you. If you're an educator and you're looking to learn more about any of these tools, this is going to be for you.
Yeah.
So we're really excited to share that announcement.
It's fantastic.
And you should go to Games for Change to learn more. Maybe I actually challenge you all to send Steve Isaacs a DM, all of you.
Do it.
DM Steve Isaacs. Mike says to DM you about the Games for Change thing.
The one thing I wanted to also share, Mike, is people hear Fortnite, they hear Unreal Engine, they probably don't even know what that means. And like you just described, it's not only used for the creation of video games. My brother works in basically the commercial and movie making industry. And he said that if a student comes out with the knowledge of how to use a program like the Unreal Engine, that they can make an easy transition to the stuff that they are teaching and those things that they actually use to be able to make all of your 3D animation, both movies and all of the different commercials. And that's a huge industry. It's not like specific, like one little thing here where it used to be like, oh, you work in the movies. Like, no, this is a huge industry with lots of potential for great jobs, to travel around the world. And a variety of different aspects too. So it's not specific to games. This is basically learning how to go ahead and work with three-dimensional objects and to be able to use them in a variety of different platforms, whether it be for video or for actual, the creation of games or other simulations. So it's super awesome.
I can give you another one. This one's cool. Yeah. You'll like this. So I have a friend who is the head of IT for a luxury car dealership in Southern Ontario. And they sell, among other luxury cars, one of the brands they sell is McLaren. Which is, very expensive. The cheapest McLaren is probably $300,000 or $400,000.
Yeah.
So they sell McLarens. And when you go to buy a McLaren, they take you into a room, and this is the McLaren purchasing room, and it's a theater. It's a theater with like lounge seats, and you sit in this theater, and the wall is obviously a screen, and the sales rep is with you, and they have a computer, and you build your McLaren in real time, piece by piece, like trim by trim, and it's all visualized on the screen for you in 3D, so you can zoom in, you can go and sit in the cockpit, you can go in the passenger side, you can look around it. It's 360. It's AR too, I believe, and it can like 3D. It can pop out so you can walk around and look at it. And that is all powered by Unreal Engine. I know for a fact that entire McLaren building program is powered in Unreal Engine. So this is not a video game.
No.
It's not a film or a television.
No.
It is the automotive industry, creating a really cool tool to build a high-end car and creating a high-end experience to do that. It's wild. When my friend told me about that, because I was telling him that I was doing work with Epic Games. This was, a year and a half ago or whatever. And he said, dude, let me tell you about this thing that's powered by Unreal Engine. That's just, I had to set it all up because he's the head of IT. So he had to install it all. It was
awesome.
Wild. So anyways, there's tons of potential in the world for these kind of tools and these kind of skills. And we'd encourage you to check it out if you're interested in learning more. But more importantly, getting your students to learn about this stuff so that they can explore the possibility of what using a tool like this would look like. So that is pretty exciting stuff. Stick with us. When we come back, we'll be talking to Heidi Williams.
It is like a spider web. These diverse, interconnected spaces help and inspire us to understand, empathize, and take local action in our schools.
That's Yajaira Guedes, a facilitator within the Teach the Global Goals community on Participate. The community is home to hundreds of resources, courses, and educators around the world, collaborating on how to bring the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals into the classroom.
With our students, and as a collective to be a powerful force to achieve the vision of a more peaceful, healthy, and equitable world.
We'll hear more later in the episode from another community facilitator on why you should get involved.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Our guest is a passionate coding and computational thinking advocate with over 30 years of experience in education. She has served as a language, science, and mathematics teacher for grades 6 to 8, and she's held roles as a differentiation specialist, technology integration specialist, instructional coach, gifted and talented coordinator, elementary principal, and a K-8 director of curriculum. She is a well-traveled speaker and the author of No Fear Coding, Computational Thinking Across the K-5 Curriculum, which has recently been re-released in its second edition. Welcome to the podcast, Heidi Williams.
Thank you so much, Mike. I am so happy to be here.
So, Heidi, for our audience members that don't know you, can you give us an introduction? I mean, Mike let us know that you have a broad range of experiences. Even off air, we were just speaking, and I didn't know that some of the experiences that you have, which are just amazing. Give us, our audience, a little bit of introduction to you.
Oh, thanks, Glenn. So I've spent 30 years in the public education sector and had a variety of different roles. The vast majority of my career was as a classroom teacher. I spent 14 years as a classroom teacher. And then I did another 6 years of instructional coaching. So the last 10 years was spent, moving up into the administrative level. But everything from school who had a very high gifted and talented population to another school where we had native Spanish speakers, and so it was bilingual and bilingual strategies. But the one common thread with engagement, no matter where it was at, was infusing some type of technology education. And not to date myself, but, I started my classroom before the internet existed. So we used
awesome.
The old CD-ROMs, when those came out for Encyclopedia Britannica. But yeah, I've always enjoyed technology, and especially with the computer science and coding and getting physical computing devices and computational thinking into the mindset of students and teachers.
So Heidi, this is the second edition of the book, No Fear Coding. So writing a first edition is an accomplishment in itself, but writing a second edition means there must have been a great demand for more of what you've been sharing. So what have you learned in the time between the two books?
Well, resources change really quickly in technology and technology education, which is why education has to start moving at a little bit faster of a pace. So a lot of the code.org resources that were listed in the book, the courses had changed significantly. So when I did the rewrite of it, I made sure to stay more generic, that no matter how they morphed or changed or improved their resources, because they have a lot of variety in a solid K-12 bank of resources that I updated it so that any teacher could use it, hopefully moving forward with a little bit more longevity. So I did learn a lot about just authoring and the process and how quickly it changes and how we need to write in order to be able to support educators through their learning and through their professional development.
It's funny, those code.org curriculums, because I was a computer science teacher, if you didn't know. So Glenn actually was texting me earlier in the week, and he's like, dude, this is your book. He was like, because
it's his jam.
I taught this stuff. And taught teachers how to do a lot of this stuff as well. So we'd have a lot to talk about if you did. We were talking off air about meeting up at Impact next time it's in person, and we'd have a lot to talk about. But one of the funny things that I always remember is thank God Code.org tended to change their product, their curriculum in the summer, so that, it didn't change in the mid-year, because I was always using it and like knee deep in it with because I taught grade 2 all the way to grade 8. But I do remember one year, which is really, it just reminded me of this story. I remember one year where they changed the entire numbering system. It was probably like 2016, maybe 2017, somewhere around there. They changed the entire nomenclature for the way that they ordered everything, and so I had to reorg it, and it's like I have to go back to start teaching in a week and a half, because we got back to school, and I started looking at it, and I'm like, oh my god, I got to renumber all of this stuff. It was hilarious. So you're right though, things changed dramatically, and one of the things that also, you've reminded me of is this, I taught game design. I used Scratch to teach kids how to make games. But, in 2015, 2016, Scratch was really one of the only games in town for teaching, especially elementary, game design and coding. And now there's tons of tools. There's not just Scratch. There's the Sandbox. There's Core. There's even there's content now for teaching Unity and Epic, Unreal Engine, and I mean they're just about to they're gonna introduce Unreal Engine coding in Fortnite soon. So I mean, there's tons of tools. How do you keep up? I have some ideas on how you do it, but I'd be interested in learning a little bit about what your your either daily or weekly kind of practices for keeping up just with what's going on out there all the time.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to admit, Mike, that I am a Mitch Resnick groupie. The first opportunity I had to actually
so am I.
Mitch Resnick.
Don't get me wrong. So am I. I stand Mitch Resnick so much.
Yeah. So, but as far as keeping up, I really rely on educators, because they're the ones in the front lines in the classrooms, and so part of my work through Marquette University is as a computer science curriculum specialist. So I'm constantly talking to educators and working with educators. So I'm always asking, well, what are you using and how are you using it and how is it standing up? And so it's making the connections with the people actually in the classroom, because I do have a lot of those connections because I spent so many years there. And then webinars, I do a ton of webinars. I would say on a weekly basis, I probably watch at least 5 webinars. I try to limit it to 1 a day because there's so much great information out there. But I do spend, being retired now and kind of doing what I love and what I want, I have time to sit down and watch that 1-hour webinar while I'm on my exercise bike doing my pedaling, especially during COVID.
Sure. Right. So you mentioned it pretty early on in the book, and you encourage your readers to model risk-taking and to be comfortable with the idea that they may pick up coding, that their students may pick up coding quicker than you, the teacher. Why do you think it is that teachers are the ones who fear coding and not the students? And what do you think teachers should be doing to overcome this fear, whether it's irrational or not? What would you suggest some tools or ideas to overcome this fear of coding that teachers tend to have?
I think one thing is just starting to understand why the fear exists. So when I look at my educational background, I went to college to learn content. My license was in 1.8, and I was taught how to do content. So you knew all the answers, you held all the answers because there was no internet to rely on. So you have a lot of educators that are getting toward the end of their careers who kind of feel lost because now all of a sudden you're asking me to do this risk-taking when before I had all the answers, and, that's ingrained in me. So I think that wall comes up, one, because of that, for the people that have been trained in that mentality and that modality. I think our younger teachers are a little bit more open for that risk-taking because, if it doesn't work and they do something with technology and it doesn't work, they got to keep at it until it does work, until they figure out how to do it, because there's nobody else there to show them how to do it. Because if they ask mom or dad's like, I don't know. So they, they keep plugging away at it.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a lot of it is understanding the fear, recognizing that it's there for a reason, and then how do you deal with that and move forward? Because I can remember in my own practice, I first started with Scratch back in 2010, and I'm like, okay, well, let's design games. And I had no idea what I was doing. We just got onto Scratch, and we figured it out together as a class, and somebody would raise their hand and said, well, how do you do this? I said, I don't know. Has anybody else figured it out yet? And somebody else would say, yeah, well, I got it. And so we'd all crowd around that kid's screen and watch how they did it. And it really is a sense of empowerment. It's the empowered learner that ISTE talks about a lot. It really empowers students to be able to take ownership of their learning and show that, we're a community of learners. And so it's really reshaping our classroom as a community of learners and not always the teacher holding the key to all the information because they don't have to anymore.
Funny, I'm looking at your background behind you, and I see you have at least I'm looking at a Sphero RVR, I think, and there's a drone there, and I'm wondering, how many robots do you have?
Oh, lots. Yeah, these are my favorite. I know they can't see me because I'm on the thing, but yeah, I've got classroom drones. The drones for the classrooms are so much fun because the first thing that the students learn, and I had to teach, and I learned this, again, by myself, right? Talk about being a risk taker. Take a classroom with 10 drones flying around in it, and we did not program the kill switch first. I learned really quickly through mistake and trial and error, the first thing we're going to program from now on is the kill switch so that it will drop if we need it to drop. But yeah, I've got B-bots, I've got the Merge Cube, I've got Adafruit, Ozobots, lots of robots.
It looks like I have a shelf. It's actually right above my head there, and there's one of the DJI drones, and I've got some Matata Lab up there, and we have a couple of Dash and Dots in the house, so we got all the robots. I find that our Glenn and I's mutual friend Becky Latov, she has a whole backdrop of robots as well, and I love these are my people, the people that have all of these things just in their house because they want to. It's because they love it, and it's not it's easy when your work is something that you really love to do, like playing with robots and teaching people how to use them, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited because this next week I get to play with a global chess challenge. So I'm part of a group volunteering my time to set up this global chess challenge where a school in the United States could play a school in Canada, and you're actually moving chess pieces virtually through QR codes and through coding. Oh. So you have to code your chess pieces, and it's done in a team atmosphere where it's a team of 4 students against another team of 4 students. But you have to, you have to design them. If a school wanted to, they could even print out their chess pieces on a 3D printer if they wanted to. So it's been really exciting designing this. So.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. So, Heidi, you obviously wrote the first edition of this, a while ago. And I'm sure that you wrote a lot of, or had been working on a lot of the second edition, even probably prior to COVID. And a lot of the updates probably happened outside of the context of the pandemic. mostly because, a pandemic isn't particularly, well, hopefully not anyways, hopefully not evergreen material, right, for a book that is going to be printed and sold, for a long period of time. That being said, I imagine some educators might still be looking at those dashes, looking at those B-bots, sitting on the shelves in the library or in their classroom, if they're back in person, and wondering if it's safe to use them, and to kind of work with them, with students, and even share them. And I've been asked this myself. Generally, I guess my advice to people who have asked me is that I thought it might be especially early on when you didn't know a lot about what was going on and how the pandemic was transmitted and stuff like that, that it would be a pretty stressful experience in an already stressful environment to have to be worried about transmitting COVID via sharing a dash with one kid to another. I'm curious how you've advised educators to handle or not handle, if that's the case, physical robots in the classroom during the pandemic.
Well, I think the one thing the pandemic has really taught all of us is about just cleanliness and hygiene. And take your cell phone, for example. I mean, our cell phones have tons of germs on them, and I find myself cleaning my cell phone much more often. And I think that's really what it's going to come down to. We're not going to take the kids' cell phones away, and they're constantly going to be sharing them and taking pictures and doing all the other things they do with them. So I think it's a matter of just making sure that schools make good choices for what robots the students are using, and make sure that they are ones that can be easily cleaned, and cleaning them in between, to get those Clorox wipes off if you can find them on the shelves, which
I was going to say it's a lot of Clorox wipes if you're going to be cleaning dashes every time one kid moves it from one to the other. Seems like a lot of work. You'd have to be really dedicated to using robots in your class to want to use them right now. But I mean, they're also huge investments, right?
Yeah, and here's the other thing that we need to think about. So my daughter's a high school athlete, and she's with her gymnastics team all the time. The gymnastics equipment does not get changed with kids from the same school. It only gets changed and cleaned when they switch schools. So that balance beam is being touched by all of the kids from the same school. So, yes, we have to be vigilant with what we're doing with COVID, but I also think that if our athletes can all be touching the same equipment, a classroom of students who are together all the time could all be touching the robots. Not to say they shouldn't be cleaned that night, but I don't think we need to clean in between each one, because we're not doing that for any of the athletic events that are going on right now either.
True. Heidi, a chapter in the book describes how coding and computational thinking fit into just like the general curriculum. And it got me thinking, because we started high stakes testing here in Minnesota, actually this week. And I listened to teachers in my district, and even just teachers on, on Twitter and social media, describe what a nightmare it is to find time just to teach things like science and social studies I'm talking about the elementary level, because they're not part of those huge outcomes that are being tested on these high stakes tests. So how do we address that time factor? And are there ways of embedding coding into content areas such as math and science? And I'm imagining so, because I was looking at the book and how you discussed that. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so and literacy is another huge area where you can embed them. Right now I'm working with a K3 and K4 teacher who have B-bots in their classroom, and they have an alphabet mat. And so what they've done is they have a station that the students go to, and they rotate through the B-bot station, where they're given activity cards where they have to move the B-bot from letter R to letter T, or letter S to letter Q. So they're, getting their early literacy site identification for those beginning letters down. When we talk about mathematics and we talk about numeracy, one of the hardest skills for students to understand is one-to-one correspondence. When you program that BBOT, you can literally see the student's one-to-one correspondence, because you'll see a student point to the square and program an arrow, and point to the next square and program an arrow, and point to the next square and program an arrow. So they're doing the one-to-one correspondence that you can see. I've also seen in a classroom where they use the BBOTs as an intervention for students who are struggling with the concept of intervals in 3rd and 4th grade. They put a number line out, and when they program the BBOT to move one command forward, it moved so many steps, and they made that an interval. And so they made the BBOT move 3 intervals. And through the practice with the BBOTs and the understanding of intervals, because they could touch it, see it, and do it, they finally got the concept, rather than just the pen and paper where we would take our finger and kind of like move a little arc from one interval to the next interval. So I've seen it done all kinds of ways. With Dash and Dot especially, there are so many different things where students can dress robots up as historical characters, or they can act out a storyline for literacy. It's amazing the way educators all across the world are integrating coding into that K-5 curriculum. The hard part is really that scope and sequence. So while we have individual teachers who are doing this work, now how do we as a district get the scope and sequence to make sure that all the concepts are being covered and it's being done equitably for that, CS for all, so that all students are experiencing it?
I had I did a teacher training with Dashes once where they did a Star Wars story, and they recorded their voices, into the Dash, so that they could, play they had a couple Dashes, so they played the role of Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, and they made like sounds, and they taped little lightsabers to the markers, but they pretended they were lightsabers, taped lightsabers to the Dash so that it had a lightsaber, and then they like programmed it to like do a little sword fight. It's like you can do anything with these things. You just one of the things that I always tried to remind people is that there's not really many limits to this. You can do almost anything. You just have to have the imagination, or at least the knowledge of where to go for resources. And I guess that's what your book helps with, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah. I've really been humbled with all the educators that have come up to me and said that they've really enjoyed my book, and it really helped their district move forward with beginning to integrate the CS. Because one of my premises has always been, you cannot ask an elementary teacher to do one more thing. They just can't. They don't have the capacity to add any more instructional minutes in there. We need to embed it and make what they have to teach more engaging. As a matter of fact, my daughter, she's a second-year teacher this year. She started her first year with COVID, and I spent many hours on the phone with her, helping her through her first year. And even now into her second year, she has been frustrated somewhat with some behaviors that she's seeing in her classroom, because she's like, Mom, the curriculum is just not that engaging. Like, there's so many more fun things that we could be doing. It's like, why can't we make learning fun? Like, let's make it fun. Let's include the robots in their learning, and it'll be more fun.
Yes, I love that. Heidi, how can teachers connect with you online and be able to go ahead and lead us to where we can purchase your new book?
Sure. So my book is for sale in the ISTE bookstore, so the International Standards in Technology Education, ISTE.org. It's in the bookstore there. They can also find it on Amazon. I also have a website that does support the activities in the book called nofearcoding.org. So that's really easy to find it there. If districts want to make larger purchases, they can always contact me as well. I do free author talks if a district purchases them for a book study. So I've already done quite a few of those. So I just volunteer my time to do that. Kind of kick them off. I've done kickoffs with educators as they started their professional learning journey in implementing and integrating computer science into the elementary curriculum.
That's awesome. Heidi Williams, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you.
This is Ava Gay Blackford, another facilitator within the Teach SDGs community.
I believe that education is the most powerful force to encourage human rights and dignity, to wipe out poverty and strengthen sustainability, to build a better future for all. I think others should join this community because it creates a support network for members and serves as a global gathering place for teachers to share stories and support one another as we all figure out what learning looks like during the current global pandemic.
To access hundreds of resources about the global goals and to connect with almost 1,000 educators around the world, join the free Teach the Global Goals community. Visit go.participate.com/global goals to get started. Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Glenn Irvin. My co-host is Mike Washburn. OnEducation is part of the On Podcast Media Network. You can listen to this show and many others by great educators like Monica Burns, Mike Matera, Tisha Richmond, and many more by visiting onpodcastmedia.com. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website, oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Mike is at Mr. Washburn on Twitter, and I can be found on Twitter at IrvSpanish. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. We're also on Instagram at OnEducationPod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Participate, for supporting us. Check out participate.com to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening, stay awesome, and see you soon.